Here we are on chapter 14, juvenile delinquents. If you don't know what juvenile means, it means young people. And delinquents are people who don't follow the law. So let's go ahead and see. All through math, I sucked on my braids and imagined all the awful things that would happen if I was caught with all those books in my locker. Every parent at Shelbourne Elementary would line up to sue me. My dad would lose his bricklaying business. My mom would lose her job. We'd have to sell our house and move to a different cities. My sisters would have to be sold into medical research companies. Well, that wouldn't be all so bad. I was overreacting and I knew it. What I was doing wasn't exactly illegal. The school board had just said that Mrs. Jones couldn't loan out these books. They didn't say I couldn't. I still wanted to loan out the books, but I didn't want to get caught. So, how was I going to let people know what books I had to check out if I didn't have a way of telling the other kids what I had? They wouldn't know to ask for them, and nobody would read them, and then it would all be for nothing. And then I had it. Why not tape a list of the books I had on my locker? I just didn't have to call it that. During language arts, I used one of the computers to type up a list, and I taped it to my locker after school. At the top, in big capital letters, it said, Books Banned at Shelbourne Elementary. Underneath that was every one of the books Miss Spencer and the other parents had taken off the shelves, with a little dot from a green magic marker next to all the books I had in the BBLL. Once everyone knew how to read it, I could just add a new green dot to any book that we got added. Presto. Looking at the list again, I realized there were still lots of books I needed to add, and Danny was running out of people to ask. What I needed was money to buy books. Bake sale, Rebecca said. Of course, I said, a bake sale. Every time we wanted to raise money to help build a well in Africa or support the Red Cross after a hurricane, we had a bake sale. All I had to do was tell my dad we were having another bake sale at school, and he picked up a brownie mix at the store without even asking what it was for. Same with Rebecca's mom. Rebecca and I set up our plastic wrapped brownies and chocolate chip cookies in a basket on a table in the cafeteria and started raking in the moolah. The first day we made $7.50. I was counting out the quarters again when Rebecca nudged me. What? I said. Rebecca nudged me harder. What? I said. I looked up and saw Principal Banana coming right for us. Her name isn't Principal Banana, of course. It's Bangzingwa, which none of the kindergartens could ever pronounce her name right. So she let them call her Principal Banana. As first graders, we were supposed to call her Principal Baninasqua, though. Principal Baninasqua reminded me of a police detective from one of those TV mysteries. She wore gray suits and black leather shoes, and she always had a walkie talkie on her belt and a school ID in a plastic holder pinned on her jacket like a badge. I expected her to yell, Freeze, punk, you're under arrest, every time I saw her. Instead, she looked over our selection of desserts and said, Looks good, ladies. What's the cause? The what? I said. What are you raising money for? Principal Benuesca asked. Her walkie talkie squawked, and she turned down the volume on it without looking at it. I pulled a braid around and chewed on it. I said. I looked at Rebecca. Her eyes went wide and she shook her head. Well, I stammered. We couldn't tell her that what our bake sale was really for. I was going to have to make something up. What had our last bake sale been for? I couldn't remember. With Detective Bansiwana staring at me, I couldn't think of anything. We're raising money for books, I said. Books? Principal Baskinasqua said. Rebecca gawked at me. Books for prisoners, I said. For them to read in prison. Rebecca closed her eyes. I think she might have been praying. Books for prisoners, Principal Bansky Waska said. Kid prisoners, kids who are our age, who are in jail. Under the table, Rebecca started hitting me in the leg with her fist. You mean juvenile delinquents? The principal said. Yeah, I said, juvenile delinquents. We're raising money to buy books for juvenile delinquents. That sounded good. Well, that's very noble of you, the principal said. I'll take 2 cookies. She handed over $1, and I had to kick Rebecca to get her to open her eyes and take the money. Rebecca turned on me the second Principal Banskiwaza was gone. Books for kid prisoners to read in jail, she said. What was I supposed to say? I said. We're raising money for the homeless or the animal shelter or the food bank. Where were all those great ideas when she was asking? said, "Well, I thought you would think of something else besides, what we were actually raising money for," Rebecca said. "Oh, yeah," I said. "Well, you just wait until Helen comes, and then you'll be sorry for picking on me." Rebecca and I busted out laughing. "I'm sorry, all right," I said. "Every time I see Principal Banana, I think of the police. It makes me nervous." "Well, at least you didn't lie to her," Rebecca said. "We are raising money for books for juvenile delinquents." Us. Helen comes. I like how they keep doing that, how they keep talking about wait till Helen comes, and they keep making it a joke since it's from one of the books they read. You'll notice people do that a lot of times when they're reading books. Okay. There was another school board meeting the next month. I didn't go, but I knew what happened. Miss Jones argued again that none of the books should be removed from the library, but the school board still agreed with Miss Spencer. All the books from her second list were officially banned. The very next day in social studies, Mr. Vaughn told us we were going to start studying the Bill of Rights. The founding fathers wrote the Constitution to explain how the American government would work, but then they realized that it did an extra part to talk about the freedoms Americans automatically got that the government couldn't take away from them. That's what the Bill of Rights is. It's 10 amendments to protect the natural rights of all citizens. The Constitution was important because it told the world how we were going to run our government, Mr. Vaughn said. The Bill of Rights might be even more important, though, because it said what our country was going to be about. It said, here are the rights we think are important that no one can take them away from us, not even the government. He added a lot more later on, but the first 10 were very famous. It was the first document of its kind in the world. For this social studies unit, I'm going to split you into pairs, Mr. Vaughn told us. Each team will study a different amendment. Your assignment will be to give a presentation to the class that explains what your amendment means, how you do that, what kind of presentation you give is up to you. Rebecca's hand shot up. "Mr. Vaughn, can I do the Sixth Amendment, please?" Sure, Rebecca, Mr. Vaughn said. He erased something in his notes and wrote in something new. I looked at Rebecca like she was crazy. "The Sixth Amendment is the right to a trial by jury," she told me, "and the right to counsel." "Does anyone else have a favorite amendment they want to do?" Mr. Vaughn asked. Not surprisingly, no one else did. "All right," Mr. Vaughn said. "Jana, I want you and Tracy to take the Fifth Amendment. Kevin, you and Danny take the Second Amendment." It turned out, while Mr. Vaughn had given the other assignments, Rebecca and I had made another $7 in our most recent bake sale, and I was trying to decide whether to buy How to Eat Fried Worms or Anne Frank's The Diary of a Young Girl. They were really hard to compare. "Amy Ann," Mr. Vaughn said, "are you with us?" "Sorry," I said. Besides me, I could sense Rebecca's eyes boring into me, but I focused on Mr. Vaughn. I said, "I'm assigning you and Trey the First Amendment. That's all right?" Was that all right? Was I all right with working on my social studies project with the son of my arch enemy, the boy who would rat me out the second I slipped up and mentioned the BBLL? No, I was definitely not all right with that. But instead, I said, "Okay, all right, everybody, get together with your partner and start reading about your amendment," Mr. Vaughn said. "I'll be coming around to help." Everyone else got up and put their desks together. I sat where I was and made Trey drag his desk all the way across the room to me. He parked it right up against mine with a thud, making my pencil bop out of its little ditch. Trey stared at his closed notebook. I crossed my arms and stared at my textbook. "Why don't you don't like me much, do you?" Trey asked. I wanted to laugh. "Don't like you much," I wanted to say. Or why would that be, Trey? Because besides your mom banning my favorite book, you drew that awful picture of me last year? Trey likes to draw. That's his thing. And I hated to admit it, but he was really good. He was so good that last year, when Trey and I were both in Miss Maple's room, he decided he would draw each of us as animals. Miss Maple was a wise old maple tree. Kenny Hawkins who was good at soccer. He drew a cheetah. Lavina Maddox, who wanted to be a singer when she grew up, he drew a songbird. Daniel Fraud, who loved Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, he drew a Ninja Turtle. Everyone loved the picture he drew of them, except me. The picture Trey drew of Amy Ann Olander was a mouse sitting on a book chewing its tail. He didn't draw me as a cheetah or a ninja turtle or a songbook bird. He drew me as a wimpy little mouse. Trey bent his head down to look at me, and I realized I hadn't said anything for a long time. Listen, Amy Ann, he said at last. The room intercom crackled to life, making both of us jump. Mr. Vaughn, the secretary said, I'm sorry for the interruption, but can we please see Jeffrey Gonzalez and Amy Ann Olander in the office? Ooh, the rest of the class said. Everyone always did that anytime anybody got a call from the office, like you were in big trouble, even if it was just because you had a dentist appointment. But this time, they knew they might be right. Half of the eyes in the room were on me, and I knew why. They all knew I ran the BBLL, and they were all thinking the same exact thing as I was. Amy Ann is busted. I'll send them right along, Miss Perry, Mr. Vaughn said, motioning at the same time for us to get a move on. My legs felt like jello as I stood across the room. Rebecca and Danny's faces looked like they had just seen Helen's ghost by the pond. I didn't know how I was even going to walk out the door without collapsing. I put my hand on Trey's desk to steady myself, and he looked up at me. Hope you're not in trouble, he said.